It's Bible Club, it's Bible Club, it's Bible Club in our town. There's singing, there's laughing, let's get the word around. Folks are all excited, we are all delighted. It's Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club in our town. It's Bible Club, it's Bible Club, it's Bible Club in our town. There's singing, there's laughing, let's get the word around. We're all excited, we are all delighted. It's Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club in our town.
Our verse talks about our verse puts people in two categories. Did you see this? Let's read it together. Or say it. John 3:18. He that believeth on him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already. Okay, so there's two groups of people in our verse. Can anyone think about what one of the groups of people are in our verse? Is that question too hard? Can you get them started, Mrs. Voegtlin? Okay, so there are some people, the verse says there are some people that are not condemned, right? Yeah, it says, he that believeth on him is not condemned. So, the verse says some people are not condemned. What about everybody else? What? They are condemned. They are, yeah, it's very simple, isn't it? It's the words right there. They are condemned. They're already condemned, aren't they? So everybody in the world either is not condemned or is condemned already. Now, our verse says that people who have done a certain thing are not condemned, and the people that have not done the certain thing are condemned already. So what is it that people need to do in order not to be condemned? Is this really hard? Corey, you got an idea? The new girl is the smartest one. What do you think? Serve God? Well, we were talking about service before, but from our verse doesn't talk about serving God. Okay, but we were talking about serving God, but you don't have to serve God. Well, you don't have to serve God in order not to be condemned. Our verse says people that do a certain thing are not condemned. You got it now? Believe. Right. He that believeth on him, or he that believes on him, is not condemned. So the people that are condemned already are the people that do not believe, right? But he that believeth not is condemned already. What is the word condemned? We're going to start learning for several weeks. We're going to learn about what the book of the Bible called Romans, the book of Romans in the Bible teaches. And the book of Romans tells us over and over and over again in a lot of different ways that God is right. We kind of knew that, didn't we? God is right. How do you think we knew that? Well, we know that because the book of Romans tells us, for one. The book of Romans will tell us that God is right when he condemns people. God is right when he justifies people. God is right when he sanctifies people. God is right when he chooses Israel. So God is always right. Now those are some big words that I bet you don't use in school. You probably don't use them when you're eating dinner on the kitchen table. You probably don't use those words very often at all. And what words are those? Condemned, justified, sanctified. We don't use those words very much, do we? But the Bible uses those words, and we're going to learn this month about the word condemned. Condemnation. It's in our verse, isn't it? He that believeth on him is not condemned. How many think condemned is a good thing? You hear the word, if I said, I'm condemning that person. Does that sound like a good thing or a bad thing? Would you want to be condemned or would you not want to be condemned? Anybody have any idea? The smart girl. Yeah, we don't want to be condemned. Condemnation, being condemned, it just sounds bad. And if it doesn't, I want it to sound bad, because we don't want to be condemned. Let me tell you what condemnation is. Let me tell you a story. Let's just make up a story. Let's say Lucas, we're going to tell the story about Lucas. It's not true. We're just going to use Lucas. Lucas goes home, and he sees on the table food, cookies. And I don't know, but let's say Lucas likes cookies. And his mom is there, and Lucas says, "Mom, can I have a cookie?" And she says, "Yes, you can have one cookie, but don't take any more because I want to take these to the neighbors." So Lucas takes his cookie, and he goes outside and he eats it, and it tastes really good. He thinks, "Wow, those were some good cookies." And he goes back inside, and what? Mom has not taken the cookies to the neighbor yet, and there's still a plate full of cookies on the table. Now Lucas is only supposed to have one, but he decides to get another one. In fact, he says one more is not enough. He takes a couple and he puts them in his pocket. Now, I don't know why he would put cookies in his pocket, but he just puts them in his pocket. And he goes outside, and not long after that, his mom comes into the kitchen, and what does she see? There's some cookies. They're not all gone, but there's some more cookies gone. And she says, "Lucas, come in here. You took some cookies." She just said he did it, didn't she? Did she see him do it? No. Just somehow, because she was a mom, she knew, right? She said, "You took cookies." And Lucas comes in and says, and then she looks and she sees in like a bulge, in his pocket, and crumbs coming out. She says, "Look, there they are." So then, what did she just do? She just proved it, right? The proof is in his pocket, the cookies. Okay? So first she said, "You're guilty." The word is declared. She declared Lucas is guilty. You're guilty. Then she proved it, right? Proven guilty. Because he had the cookies. And the third part of condemnation, all this has to do with condemnation, she said, "Lucas, the whole family, we're going to have French fries as part of supper tonight, but you won't have any French fries." Okay? She sentenced him to judgment, to punishment. She said, "You're going to get this punishment because you took more cookies than you were supposed to." Okay? We made up that story, but there's three things there. First, she said, "You're wrong." That's condemnation. Then she said, "The cookies are in your pocket." That's condemnation. Then she said, "You're going to be punished because you did wrong." And that's condemnation. All three of those things have to do with the word condemnation. We're going to learn what the Bible teaches us about condemnation for the next few weeks. You know what? There was a man, and his name was Stephen. We don't have any Stephens here. We told this story about Stephen not that long back, so some of you might be able to help me say it. Stephen, he loved the Lord, and he tried to serve God. He wanted everybody to know about God, and so he went to these certain places where people were, and he began to tell them how Jesus was the Christ and that everybody needed to believe on Jesus to be saved. But the people listening there did not like Jesus. They were Jewish people, and they had decided not long earlier that they had actually killed Jesus. They were the ones that had killed him. And they didn't want to hear that Jesus was God. So he was there, and the people were all upset, and they were getting mad at him. They asked him this question and asked him that question and this and that, and he always had the perfect answer for them. They could not trick him they could not confuse him. He always had the right answer. Well, finally they thought, what are we going to do with Stephen? And they thought, well, this is what we do. They caught him. He's just walking down the street, minding his own business. They caught him, and they brought him to court. And when they brought him to court, they had got some other people to lie about him and tell the court that Stephen had blasphemed God, that he had spoken against God. Had Stephen spoken against God? No. He was preaching and teaching about Jesus being God. Well, they decided that since these liars had said that, the court said he needs to die. And so they took Stephen out. You remember when we talked about suffering? Stephen gave his life. They took Stephen out, they threw great big rocks on him, and they stoned him to death. Some of you should remember. Remember, some people, they went to jail because they preached for Jesus. Other people were told to stop doing good things, and Stephen was killed. They took his life from him because he was preaching about Jesus. Well, there was a man there watching and even helping. All these guys that were trying to throw rocks, they had their big coats on. They took their coats on and they gave them to this man right here. And his name, do you remember his name? His name was Saul. You remember Saul?
Yeah.
Saul was there and he approved of all of that stuff. He thought Christians were bad people. He declared that they were bad people, didn't he? He condemned Christians. He said, they're bad. And so after this time, he would go into people's houses. Are you a Christian? And he would drag them out. He decided, he sentenced these people, just because they were Christians, to punishment. He condemned those people, didn't he? And then he heard, and since there was so much persecution, Christians started going out of that town, and they started going up to other towns, and Saul heard that a bunch of Christians had gone to the city of Damascus. So he went to the chief priest, and he said, I heard there's a bunch of Christians up there, those evil Christians, that they're against God, and I want to go up there and capture a bunch of them and bring them back here so that they can be tried. He had in his mind and heart already condemned those Christians, hadn't he? So he was on his way. He had letters and all that. He was on his way up there to Damascus. And do you remember what happened? Right before he got to Damascus, what happened? Jesus came down. He got blinded. Remember, a bright shining light from heaven knocked him down on the ground, and he heard a voice from heaven said, Saul, it's hard for you to kick against the pricks. Now that's a word that they used back then. But it's hard. So you are persecuting me. So the voice from heaven said, you are persecuting me. What did the voice just do? It condemned him, didn't he? Here he had condemned the Christians, and really he was under condemnation. And then the voice from heaven said, you are persecuting me. Now Paul is condemned, isn't he? He realized he had been condemning other people, and he realized that he was condemned, and he thought that Jesus was not alive. He thought that Jesus was dead. And here, who was talking to him from heaven? Jesus was. He realized that he was wrong, and he used to not believe in Jesus, but now he's talking to Jesus from heaven. He says, I believe in Jesus, right? So he changed his way and he said, Lord, what do you want me to do? And Jesus told him to go into the town, remember, and wait. And 3 days later, a man by the name of Ananias came and prayed with him, and Paul got his eyesight back. And then Paul lived a long time after that. And we have been learning how he went to different towns telling people about Jesus. And at one point there, Paul wrote a book. He wrote a letter to the Christians that lived in Rome. And the letter is called the Book of Romans, or the letter to the Romans. And so Paul writes this letter to the Romans, and in the first part of it, he talks about being condemned. He knew what it meant to be condemned, right? He knew what it meant to condemn other people, because he said, those Christians, they're guilty, and I don't think they ought to be punished. And then he realized he was guilty, because Jesus said, you're persecuting me. And he turned from that way, and he was saved. He was converted. But so he knew what it meant to be condemned, and God gave him special revelation. God gave him the words to write to the Romans, and for the next 3 weeks we're going to learn some more about what it means to be condemned. But like I said in the beginning, everybody in the world is either condemned or condemned already, or they're not condemned. Everybody is. Everybody in this room. You're either already condemned or you're not condemned. And you might be thinking, which one? Which one am I? Well, our verse tells us who is already condemned and who's not condemned, doesn't it? It says, it says, the Bible says, those that believe on him, who's him? Jesus. Those that believe on him, he that believes on him is not condemned. But he that believes not is condemned already. We'll try to understand better what that means as the weeks go by. But if you say, I don't know whether I'm condemned or not, if you believe on Jesus, you believe that he's God, and that because as God, he came and lived on the earth, died for our sins, was buried, and rose again, and now he's in heaven waiting to judge everybody who doesn't believe on him. If you believe on him, and you've turned from your way, and you're trying to obey him, you've turned to him, then you're not condemned. But those that don't believe on him, maybe they've heard of him, but they don't believe on him. They don't believe that he's God. They just have done whatever. The Bible says they are already condemned. So, as we teach about this more, if you have more questions about that, me and my wife and the rest of us that have the Bible Club here are always ready and willing to answer questions that you might have.